Today we're going to cover 10 of the most popular cards in the game that people mistakenly upgrade and probably shouldn't. Starting off is Goblin Giant. Now, this is kind of weird because Goblin Giant is one of the most boosted decks in the game right now. However, the reason I'm saying this is because outside of that deck, Goblin Giant is one of the worst tanks in the game, and the Evo is not worth it at all either. So if you manage to have all the cards in the most boosted deck, you know, Pekka, Goblin Giant, Curse, Machine, upgraded, then by all means play it and enjoy your free wins. But do not upgrade that deck, because by the time you get to upgrade that deck, unless you're willing to drop 60 bucks right now, it's going to be dead and it's going to be nerfed because that deck will not survive longer than another month. Outside of that deck, Goblin Giant is a subpar win condition in a beatdown non-friendly meta, which just means that Evos are getting released more often and more often to counter beatdown decks, especially ground beatdown. As you can see, Golem is really bad as well, so the Goblin Giant is just a worse version of that, and I definitely wouldn't recommend upgrading it or building a deck around it. Next up is Elite Barbarians. I don't know why I have to say this, but Elite Barbarians are one of the highest used cards early game. It's just a nightmare. Avoid upgrading Elite Barbarians. These cards will get outshined by almost anything else on offense and defense, and while, you know, they're cool sometimes behind a rage and, you know, a Goblin Giant, the often majority of the time you're gonna get killed using the Elite Barbarians. They're easy to counter, easy to kite, and easy to turn into positive elixir trades for your opponent. And most of the time, for 6 elixir on defense, you can defend stuff for much cheaper and still get the better or same results. Mini Pekka, one of the most, maybe I'll regret this in 3 months if it ends up getting an evolution, but Mini Pekka right now as it stands is just not worth playing. Now there's a role where you either have a damage DPS or you have a mini tank, and the Mini Pekka doesn't really fit too well into one of those roles because he's too squishy and he doesn't tank, and well, he's too squishy, which is why he doesn't do both of those things. So the Mini Pekka, while doing a lot of damage and being kind of, again, like the wizard, easy to understand, consistently gets kited, gets distracted, doesn't put in value, is useless against swarms, and when you need him to tank for things, won't tank for things because he doesn't have enough health, and you're going to need to then end up putting another mini tank in your deck because Mini Pekka doesn't do a good enough job, and now you've got a very clunky deck with too many tank hybrid things in it, and it just throws off the whole synergy of your deck. He underperforms, doesn't do that often, but hey, when he gets on the tower, whew, that's a whole nother story, and I could get why people love to play him, but I wish he was good. Unfortunately, he is not really worth playing, and for all the reasons listed, isn't worth upgrading. Minion Horde. Now, I understand that this card's getting a buff and they're going to be very fast, and while that's cool, right, I think that'll mainly affect the normal minions. The problem with the Minion Horde is they get, like, when's the last time they got a positive elixir trade? Do you remember? Because I don't. I deadass don't remember. This card is a walking free elixir for your opponent. Usually just die to arrows or die to wizard or firecracker or name any other of the 30 splash cards in the game without getting consistent value. And they, on offense, are way too squishy. Obviously, sometimes if your opponent uses all 4 of their Minion Horde answers and they are at 0 elixir, then you will get, you know, your Minion Horde to get through to the tower. That almost never happens. And on defense, it's so hard to get value out of them when there's a tank support, or there's a tank supporting a splash unit that you can't kill. And oftentimes for 5 elixir, again, you're throwing it down the drain, and you could much rather have something else in your deck. Even the normal minions will consistently do better than Minion Horde, but they're still risky to not good to play. But Minion Horde, super popular card for no good reason. It is extremely easy to stop a Minion Horde, and I wouldn't recommend upgrading it. The Witch is getting a massive nerf to its evolution, and even the normal Witch is just something that so many people use, but probably shouldn't. Once again, for 5 elixir, you're getting a troop that does a decent amount of splash and some damage. And it's just not worth it. You could get so much more value from another ranged support card, particularly Evos. Just look at things like E-Wizard. You're going to get consistently more value out of things like E-Wizard or Firecracker or Evo Archers. Or even the Musketeer sometimes, although that's that spoiler also on the list. It's just, there are so many ranged support troop cards that just get outshined. And there are some that dominate the category. Witch is not one of those. And Witch is absolutely not something you should invest in with the Evo, because now it's going to be a bottom 3 Evo in the game. Okay, maybe that's a bit extreme. But it's just not going to be something that's worth upgrading, because even if you had paired the Witch with a Graveyard, which was necessary to be, you know, have the Witch be good, now that that's getting taken away, the Witch Evo is just not going to be useful at all. And the the normal witch isn't going to do enough damage consistently, and for 5 elixir, you're going to find yourself in the early game down a lot. Another one of the game's most popular cards is the Lumberjack, and the Lumberjack, while fun and while raging up your troops sounds nice, he suffers the same plight as the mini Pekka. Yes, there are situations where the Lumberjack is good. Like, if you're playing Lumberloon, ignore me. Just upgrade your Lumberjack. I wouldn't play Lumberloon because it sucks, but every other Lumberjack deck in the game is like devastatingly mid. I guess the Giant Prince Lumberjack deck is alright, but it's just, oh god, it's not consistently good. You see so many people who have the Lumberjack as like their mini tank role, and they just get slaughtered because they don't have a mini tank. Or, now that they have the Lumberjack, they don't have a mini tank, so they feel the need to throw the Knight or the Valk in their deck. So now their deck is clunky, and it's literally the same problem we had with the mini Pekka. Not only the troop's strength is really important to whether or not you should upgrade it, but how it synergizes well with the deck. And Lumberjack only synergizes well with a select few things, so it's definitely just not worth upgrading. And the Evo isn't good either ever since it got changed to 2 cycles, because you barely ever get it, and it just is way too slow. You're not going to be able to get that many Lumberjacks down. You might get 1 Evo a game. So ultimately, I wouldn't upgrade this card. Next up is the Musketeer. Now, the main reason I'm saying this is because the Musketeer is one of the most popular cards in Clash Royale, and they just get shoved in like any deck in the game. This is the problem we have with stuff like Mini Pekka as well, where you just throw the card in your deck because it looks cool. But the Musketeer is going to be outshined barely by other ranged support troop cards. She is significantly better than the Wizard and the Witch, but the problem is she doesn't have a crazy like balance of offense and defense. She's decent on defense and she's decent on offense. You can get cards that are a lot stronger on both, like the Firecracker, and the Musketeer just isn't going to be enough to deal with big pushes as well as apply significant offensive pressure. If your opponent isn't a drone, the Musketeer is never going to get any damage on the tower or even apply a threat to get damage on the tower. When you look at support troop cards, something you want to know is, can they counter push? Do you have to play extra to make your card counter push? Or is it a threat? If I slap a giant at the bridge in front of the Musketeer, it's not really a threat. I don't care. But for example, if there was a Firecracker there, if there was an Executioner there, I would be a little bit more scared. The Musketeer Evo is also extremely hard to play and only good in a few select decks, so it is pretty popular because a lot of people like the Musketeer, and I would strongly recommend staying away from it. Baby Dragon, another one of the most popular cards in the game, who is, if you had to upgrade any card on this list, it'd probably be the Musketeer. Literally, wet paper towel dispenser. The thing does 100 damage, and while it has some nice health, it oftentimes just gets blocked by a mini tank. And then your push is, you know, you have to just sit there and watch your push die as your Baby Dragon. 16 hits later, we've got through the Ice Golem, but at what cost? Baby Dragon is, again, rather intuitive, easy to play. It gets unlocked early on, and while it can be appealing to upgrade epic cards because they're a higher level early on, stay away from it. Save your epics for better cards because the Baby Dragon is not worth it at all and doesn't fit in any meta decks once you get into that portion of the game where you're looking for meta decks, and the Baby Dragon is just going to be a disappointment. Please don't use it. This is a bit of a hot take. I'm going to go with the Goblin Barrel for another card you should not upgrade because I've watched a lot of bait gameplay. Shout out to Faith. This is not a card that is worth pursuing for lower/mid ladder. Logbait is miserable unless you're literally Riley. The Goblin Barrel bait decks have fallen off a lot, and a lot of why bait is so popular is things like mortar bait and other suspicious bush bandit. A lot of the bait decks are just corny tower troop abusing bait decks. Goblin Barrel bait itself isn't something that's really worth upgrading. It's kind of hard to play, and if I was starting from scratch, something I'd do is play an easier deck, like a cycle deck or a broken beatdown deck or bridge spammer, literally anything other than bait, because it's infuriating. There's lots of bad matchups. It's hard to play, and it's not really enjoyable. The Evo Barrel also has to be used very specifically to get consistent value, or every time you chuck it at the tower, it's just going to do nothing, and you're going to, you know, blame the Evo Barrel being horrible and yell at me in my tier list ranking. So don't do that. But those are the top 10 cards to avoid upgrading in Clash Royale. Let me know any harsh criticism you have in the comments.